to be raised from the dead. Look at John chapter 11, the case of Lazarus. He himself raised Lazarus from the dead. But the difference is this: when Jesus came, he told the people, pull the stone out. So human beings pulled that stone out. And then he said, bring the corpse out. Of course, they hesitated at first. Remember, it could have been smelly. But then he reminded them, how's the Lord? I'm the Lord.
Hello everyone, before we dive into this episode, I invite you to discover how to live, learn, love, and age healthier, happier, stronger, and longer, authentically. Why knowledge matters. What was the biggest challenge that you ever faced in your life?
My biggest challenge came when I was like 18 years old, or say 19 years old, when I had to decide whether to go, whether to proceed to the major seminary or not. Because when I was growing, the priesthood primarily was not like a vocation I was looking forward to. But at some point, when I left middle school and went to the junior seminary for high school, at the end of my high school studies, I felt a real push within me. But I did not find myself worthy enough to pursue the priesthood. So that for me was like a big challenge. It was like an obstacle to what I had to do myself. You know, it took me a lot of time, prayer, reflection, and even some counter, event before I convinced myself that God actually had something for me. So I pushed out everything that happened to be an obstacle. First of all, um, I did not find myself worthy, as I said it. Secondly, I had not disposed my family, even though it's not a family affair, but I didn't like give that impression primarily that that was going to be my goal. And finally, I kept asking myself, how do I fit in? I had to travel to another region of the country completely. So I think that's I don't want to say the biggest obstacle, but or the biggest challenge, but one of the biggest challenges that I have at least
Why do you think you had this obstacle?
uh, a specific path. I met people who had decided right from the time that they were in primary school or elementary school. I knew friends who were already there, who for whom I thought, I mean, they might have had their own obstacles or their own challenges, but the way I perceived them, I thought it was going to be a smooth challenge. I remember very well when I met my spiritual director, Father Humphrey Tata, um, in high school around the time of decision making. I told him that I can't make it. And he really told me, okay, if you can't make it, you just go apply, go to a secular university and continue your life. I said, okay. But when I left his office, I thought I had overcome the obstacle by going somewhere else. But I still felt that push within me. So when I applied to continue major seminary formation, I told him, Father, I applied. I mean, he was happy because he knew that, so those were just some of those. And why I thought it was serious, because I got friends, as I told you, it was very clear for them that they just wrote it, apply, so we knew, even in class, they kept advising me, Basil, you think that you can't make it, you can make it. So sometimes I even felt like, in quotes, envious, that these people, why is their own just so easy? And
How did you overcome these obstacles? What do you think was it that you were able to overcome this obstacle?
a certain passion for prayer. I hardly went for morning masses when I was on vacation, but I came to realize that at that time when I got that obstacle, those like it was like a stone within me. Every morning I just found myself, going to church and praying. And I think I met some good people in my life too around that time, in spite of the fact that in my culture, as I said, many people will just want to discourage you. In African culture, for example, when you talk about the priesthood, the only thing that strikes them is celibacy, just marriage. You don't have children, nothing. So they will not really want to see it as a valuable something. But I got some few good people too who encouraged me and said, "Basil, you can make it. You go ahead." So prayer and good um, directions.
What does the crucifixion, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ mean to you?
The crucifixion, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ give me a lot of courage, in the sense that I look at Jesus Christ. That which strikes me in the life of Jesus is that this was somebody completely innocent. Personally, I've had some cases in my ministry when innocent I was, but I was victimized. It happens even in so many other people's lives. But I look at Jesus as somebody who did nothing, and at the same time, he suffered. And then resurrection is a big victory. It comes out so well when we chant the Alleluia at Easter Vigil and throughout Easter. So for me, it strikes me in the way that when I think about some of the difficulties I face too, some of the challenges I face too, I tell myself that I'm not the first person to face such challenges. And most of all, some of the difficulties I face, or the let me say chastisement I face, also stem from my own weakness. Sometimes I do something that fires back, but then I still have that courage to see that the same Jesus who died innocently is there to take care, because the conclusion of the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ is that he died and resurrected to take away our sins and to show us that even if we fall, we can rise up. So it goes out in two aspects. The first aspect, at those innocent moments, I know that I'm not the only person who has ever suffered innocently. My Lord and Savior suffered innocently. And at the same time, at the times that I suffer because of my own weakness, I realize that there is somebody I can look forward to who tells me that he died on that cross to free me from the calamity or from the weakness that I find myself. So it gives me that struggling disposition and that hope that even though falling and rising, I have a purpose in life, that of pursuing Jesus Christ, who wants us to rise and to fall no more.
So it's very practical as well. So walk us through how the resurrection informs your daily life as a priest and a human being.
As a priest, first of all, I always consider that I am a human being before a priest. In the seminary, one of the things that strikes me, and as I always tell even other people, even though I am a priest, I'm different from other priests. Fundamentally, all of us are priests, but human beings, we have different characters on which our priesthood is built. That's why one of the theological phrases will go that grace builds on nature. Grace builds on nature. So when I look at my own self as I go along, I have that confidence that in spite of myself, the resurrection of Jesus Christ, the passion of Jesus Christ is always there to inform me. So much so that when I get some of those challenges, because life is full of challenges, even as a priest, sometimes you are counseling somebody and you make that person to understand that the situation in which you are not the first person. Just this Pascal mystery. The crucifixion, the death, the resurrection of Jesus Christ, for me, summarizes every a physical or spiritual context that we find ourselves. So, in my daily encounter with people, I always want them to understand as we get along that the crucifixion informs informs my daily life. If I get up in the morning, I ask myself, what am I to do today? And as I get on with my activity, uh, uh, pastoral activities, I just go freely, free conscience, because I know that there are just two things that can happen to me. Either I do things correctly, or something doesn't go well along the line. Which the only consolation I give myself when something doesn't go the way it's supposed to go is that my conscience was clear when I picked it up. There was a time that I had a serious problem with one of my staff because I came to the office and there was a certain baptism that was to take place, and the file was on my table. I didn't see it for whatever reason. And then when I came to the day of the baptism, I had a different program. And then he reminded me the Friday that, remember, Father, tomorrow you got baptism. And I was like getting annoyed. But by the time I checked, I realized that she had actually put it and the fault was mine. The highest thing I'll do is to apologize. I said, sorry, I didn't know, you know. And I thank God that saying that, she too will understand. But the difficulty we have in life all the time is that sometimes you either want to destroy that evidence so that you don't make yourself the bad person, because human tendency is to claim that you are always right or to avoid blame. Or secondly, you tend to blame somebody, and then at the end you discover that you were wrong. You don't know how to apologize to that person, or you apologize, the person doesn't take it, because some people too are stiff. But personally, as a person, I always try to make my life as simple as possible, and I try to apologize once I know that I am wrong. I don't take any advantage of the fact that maybe I'm in charge somewhere, like in my parish and pastor, or maybe because I'm a priest, people will want to look at me as that moral authority, as that spiritual authority. The human nature is also there. And everything again goes back to the crucifixion, because when we fall in some of those circumstances, it's like we are being lost in darkness. It requires grace, the grace of the resurrection, to lift us up at all moments.
Are you forgiving yourself easily?
That's a difficulty. I try to do so. I forgive myself easily, but honestly, the challenge, I like to be very honest with myself. The challenge is that sometimes I ask myself, but why did I find myself in this situation? How long will I forgive myself? But the good thing I like about myself is that I always try to go in a clean conscience, so much so that even if I miss something I could have done, I know that I did not do it because I wanted to punish a particular situation, or to punish a particular person, or to make some situation not to happen the way it could happen. But I try to forgive myself by convincing myself that whenever I go a way that I was not supposed to go, it's just some kind of human nature pulling off that way.
What was different this Easter than the previous Easter?
In my church, especially, this Easter was different. I think I got more people. The good thing, at least I have a congregation that is a growing congregation. And the difference also that I had this Easter is that I had an assistant. I got a priest, Father Kennedy, if a French speaking priest who lives with me now. He has been with me with a couple. He has lived with me for like 5 6 months. So he gives me some assistance. In that case, now at least the ministry itself, the workload, if I may put it that way, reduced somehow. But the joy of the resurrection still continues to flow out there. And I got many more people coming. So these are the two practical differences.
What brings you the greatest joy in Easter?
The greatest joy in Easter comes for the fact that when I see the effort that people put in, for example, we have the Stations of the Cross here, and I'm happy so many people came for the Stations of the Cross. When I go for the Sacrament of Reconciliation, I see a good number of people coming in. And then at Easter, just the chanting of Hallelujah, just the fact that people who have struggled, myself included, to fast, to do some charity, to pray a little more. We have come at that level where all those readings, the readings that come, they give you all the hope, from the book of Genesis, the creation, man created in the image and likeness of God, going to Jesus Christ now humbling himself, taking the form of human being, and then you get all the wonderful readings about the apostles and disciples going to the tomb and encountering the empty tomb. It just makes life, so wonderful, in the sense that you see that transition from all readings about betrayal, all those things. It's psychological too. Religion, as I said last time, you got the social dimension, the psychological dimension, the theological dimension. So this psychological dimension wraps into spirituality.
Lastly, it's so interesting because there's no body anymore, right? Because he is risen. What does it tell us about the truth of Jesus Christ, the fact that there is no body of him and that he is risen, and that some people might think like it's a myth and other believe it's the truth. So how do you reconcile the two? And did you ever ask yourself why this miracle happened?
Yeah, one of the things that we've got to be very um, certain about is that it's historical. The Old Testament had prepared for this to happen. That's why I like the way the church chooses readings for this Easter time. They try to get some of those readings at the Old Testament that prefigured that the Messiah was to come, he will suffer, he will die, and he will rise from the dead. And then Jesus himself, even though the apostles were slow to understand, he had informed them that it was going to happen. And that which again makes it really, really convincing is that Jesus is not the first person to be raised from the dead. Look at John chapter 11, the case of Lazarus. He himself raised Lazarus from the dead. But the difference is this: when Jesus came, he told the people, pull the stone out. So human beings pulled that stone out. And then he said, bring the corpse out. Of course, they hesitated at first. Remember, it could have been smelly. But then he reminded them, I was the Lord. I'm the Lord. So they brought out the corpse, which had been tied with the strings around him, and he told them, untie him. They untied him, and he was risen. But look at the case of Jesus Christ. There's no evidence that somebody pulled that stone away. So something must have happened. God had certainly made it happen. And then when the disciples came, Peter went in. Of course, John came first, saw the clothes, they saw everything. So who unwrapped him? Where was the body? Where is the body today? So the historical fact that is progressing in that way shows that something extraordinary happened. And that's where we conclude the historical value of the resurrection against those who want to think that it's a myth.
Father Basil Sede, thank you so much for being back. It's such a
Thank you.
pleasure
Thank you so much.
to have you. Father Basil Sede. That's why knowledge matters. Make your life a masterpiece. Visit now programs.d-ykm.com. Hello everyone, before we dive into this episode, I invite you to discover how to live, learn, love, and age healthier, happier, stronger, and longer, authentically. That's the Why Knowledge Matters podcast.